Hello and welcome, and thank you for joining me for this delicious sugar-free pie recipe. We're going to start with a homemade crust. This is an oat flour crust, but the recipe, which comes from tastesoflizzietea.com, does also include a quarter cup of flour. I don't think that makes a difference. If you want this to be all oats, then go ahead and do that. So we're going to start by turning the rolled oats into flour. You're supposed to start with a cup of instant oatmeal, which I don't have. So I decided, since I don't want it to look like oatmeal when I'm finished rolling it out, I was going to pulverize it into a flour. So that's 1 cup of rolled oats. And then we're going to add in a 1/3 cup of, I have whole wheat flour. Any kind of flour substitute will do as well. I don't think it's going to matter too much as long as it's not a very savory flavor. It's got to be neutral, like almond flour or oat flour. I don't think I would recommend chickpea flour with this. The reason I decided to make my own crust was because the store-bought crusts are not sugar-free, and they're pretty high in carbs. So I wanted to make my own, and I like using oatmeal instead of wheat when I can because it's a good lower glycemic index substitute. So we also need to make some brown sugar. It's going to be a 1/3 cup of, this says dark brown sugar. Oh no, it says dark or light brown sugar. So take a 1/3 cup of your sugar substitute. I always use sucralose 1:1 for regular sugar. I find any 1:1 ratio of sugar substitute is my favorite kind to use. And then if you're going to make your own brown sugar, which you should if you want a sugar-free-ish version, is to take a teaspoon of molasses for every 1/4 cup of sugar. I did just end up doing a teaspoon for this 1/3 cup quantity, and it turned out fine. I find mixing it with my hands to be easier than using a spoon or something, and it gives you the opportunity of squeezing the molasses into the sugar or fake sugar crystals. So there's my 1/3 cup of brown sugar substitute. I'm mixing the dry ingredients right now because I had not done that earlier, so the flour and the oats are getting mixed together. And then I'm going to pour in the sugar. So now we're adding a 1/2 teaspoon of salt to the crust recipe. And then we're supposed to add a 1/3 cup of butter. I'm using a vegan margarine. It's supposed to be 5 tablespoons plus a teaspoon. I decided the teaspoon can go to the devil, and I'm just going to do 5 tablespoons because I hate having weird quantities of ingredients left over. So do what you will with that. I could have added a teaspoon of vegetable oil because that's basically what margarine is, but I didn't do that. So if you think it's a little dry, go ahead and add some vegetable oil or even a whole tablespoon extra instead of the teaspoon. It's not the sort of thing that would matter that much in this recipe. You're making a crust. You're not trying to split an atom. This is another weird trait of mine. The recipe says to take one of those pastry cutters, which looks like the letter D with a bunch of like silver letter D's all next to each other, capital D. It's the only thing I can describe it. So one of those things, and use that in this to cut the butter up and make it form the crust. But you don't really need those kind of tools if the only thing you're going to ever do with the letter D pastry cutter is make a pie crust, then don't buy one. Just use your hands because it's just as good. So what I'm doing here is something my husband told me was not necessary after I finished doing it, but I'm going to let the oats soak for half an hour, soak up the butter so that they're more moist, since the recipe said to use instant oatmeal instead of rolled oats. And then I forgot to cover the bowl when I did this, and so it kind of dried out, so I was flicking some water onto it to make it more malleable. So my husband said that since I had pulverized the oats, I basically turned them into instant oatmeal anyway. I guess if you have rolled oats and you need instant oatmeal in a recipe, you're just supposed to throw it in the food processor for a very short time until it breaks them up into smaller pieces. I don't know how that changes it, because it seems like the last time I had instant oatmeal, it was very obviously like paper thin compared to the rolled oats. And like those cornstarch packing peanuts, it just kind of dissolved quite immediately. So maybe something's wrong with the oatmeal I've bought, but I didn't know that that was the only difference really, was that they got cut a little finer, and that's what makes it instant. Live and learn. So then spray some nonstick spray in a pie tin or this, I'm gonna guess 8-inch cake pan. I also started spreading it from the middle when my husband said, "Oh, you should have spread it from the outsides." And I'm like, who rolls a log of dough along the outside of the pan? That's not a thing people do. We all start from the middle, right? Don't we? But anyway, it was like not thick enough, and I kept like trying to get some dough on the sides there to make it more pie-like, and it didn't really work. So I don't know how this is supposed to fit in a regular pie tin. I don't understand. I have the right amount of ingredients, except for the butter, but that does not make a difference. So now we're going to cook this at 375 for 3 to 15 minutes. And once it is kind of toasted looking, that means it's done. Once the pie crust is done, you do want to let it completely cool before you put the pie filling in. And then one other thing is that this crust recipe is technically for pie that you don't have to bake afterwards. So I couldn't do a fruit pie, which is what I really wanted, because then I would have overcooked the crust. So I don't know if you remember when I made the vegan sugar-free Oreos, I had 2 ounces extra of baking chocolate. This is the unsweetened stuff. And I was like, meh, I don't know why they couldn't just make the recipe include like a full package instead of a package and a half. So I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this extra chocolate. And like that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And yes, it has. It is. No, I'm just kidding. It's not the worst thing that's ever happened to me. So I decided to throw some chocolate into this recipe. It does not include it really. This sugar-free pie filling recipe is from the sugarfreediva.com, which is a website I use for a lot of recipes. And going back to the adding the chocolate, the melted chocolate, I don't recommend it because the melted chocolate was warm and the pie ingredients, the filling was cold, and so the melted chocolate formed all these little tiny balls of chocolate everywhere inside, which was not the effect I was going for. I kind of just wanted to mix it in with the pudding. So what I had found online was that 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of sugar per ounce of chocolate basically makes semi-sweet chocolate. So I did 2 tablespoons for my 2 ounces of chocolate left. And I used real sugar just to make sure it was sweet enough. So it was another reason why I say don't do this part, because it wouldn't be sugar-free. And it wasn't sweet enough, so I did like half a tablespoon more, and I thought that was good enough. So now we're going to start with the actual sugar-free Diva recipe. At this point, there should be nothing in the stand mixer. So you're going to want 2 of those small containers of sugar-free pudding. I'm using chocolate, obviously. I think they also make sugar-free vanilla, and I'm not sure if they make sugar-free banana, but they should, because I really now want a banana cream pie like nobody's business. And that seems like it would be very easy to make using just banana substitutes for the chocolate and then slicing some bananas on top. I think that that would be a fabulous dessert to bring to any gathering. But for now, we're going to be making some chocolate pudding pie. This is kind of like a chocolate silk pie. So this recipe is not vegan for this reason. This is heavy whipping cream. The substitutes I found online were a bit pricey, but if you're into, I think coconut milk was a good substitute. Any kind of thick milk. Honestly, I could have probably just used milk, like make a regular pudding. The recipe on the pudding package calls for milk, not whipping cream. I don't think this added that much to it. But I needed 3 cups, so that was the reason for that gigantic bottle. So I put in 2 cups, and now I am scraping down the sides of the measuring cup so I can see where the 1 cup marker is, and then I'm pouring in another cup. So that'll be 3 cups of heavy whipping cream. I think that it would be perfectly fine if you halved this recipe and just did like one of those pudding boxes and half the cream or milk, because I honestly think milk would be fine. Because there was quite a lot of filling in the pie when I was finished with this. So now I'm adding the melted chocolate that I sweetened myself with real sugar. And as you remember, the whipping cream is in here and it's quite cold, and the chocolate is warm because it came out of the microwave. And those two things did not mix well. So I mixed it in the stand mixer, and there were little chunks of chocolate everywhere, which isn't like a big deal, but I wanted it to sort of blend in with the pudding and sort of seem like it was a darker flavor of pudding. And that did not happen. But it still tasted good. So this recipe says that you can reserve some of the whipped cream for the top of the pie and mix it with like powdered sugar and vanilla extract, etc. And I wasn't interested in mixing with that stuff because, well, frankly, the powdered sugar I was going to have would have been sucralose, and I think that the stuff that was in the sugar-free Cool Whip was already better than that. So I reserved, instead of the 1 1/4 cup of whipping cream that they suggested. I didn't reserve any whipping cream. Maybe they meant whipped cream. Maybe that's why there was so much filling, because there's too much whipping cream in this recipe. The recipe does not really... It tells you the total amount of ingredients, and then it says for the topping, and then there's random extra ingredients, and I'm like, what is this for? So for the topping, I just reserved a 1/2 cup of whipped cream because I thought that's plenty. And then I put the full tub into the stand mixer for the pie. Okay, I just reread the recipe again. It says an additional 1 1/4 cup of whipping cream for the topping, and that's just way too much whipping cream. Did they mean whipped cream, and is it a typo? I don't know. It's too much whipped cream too. Unless you're making the whole thing, the whole top of it white, it's just too much. So there's the crust, and now we're ready to plop in the pudding mixture. And this is going to take a while and be a little bit annoying and weird looking. The recipe does say that when you are ready to serve it, you add the topping at that point. So if you're going to make this for a party and then like make it ahead of time and serve it later, after you do the chocolate part, cover it up, keep it in the fridge, and keep the whipped cream in the fridge, and then go ahead and add the topping right before you get to the party. If you're enjoying this recipe, please like, share, and subscribe so my channel can reach more people and lots of other people just like you can find healthier recipes. So I'm not serving this for a party and decided to put the topping on right away. And normally I wouldn't do this, but I don't like wasting plastic. So this would, I don't even know if we still have these things. I think we've had them for, well, my husband probably bought them before I met him. Let's just say it's been nearly 8 years. So this is like a piping bag for decorating cakes and cookies and stuff. So I decided to put the whipped cream topping in that and have like a visually appealing design on the pie. So I don't know what you call that tip. It's the one with serrations on it. It's not smooth. It's the one that looks cute. All the other two ones we have are like straight and I don't know, just are would make lines, I guess. So yeah, I did this with the piping bag just for the internet. And then I ate the rest of the whipped cream that was in that piping bag. So, like I said, you don't need as much as the recipe said, unless you're covering the entire thing. So, I don't know if you noticed the pie cutter thing I'm holding upside down because I'm left-handed. The serration is in the wrong spot for me, and this is part of my. I would just not use it or get one that was for lefties if they even exist, because that'd be fun to have. But I'm still going to use this one because it came in a set with my grandmother's Oneida cutlery, which I have now. That's the one I'm always using in these videos, the forks and spoons that you'll see. So it came with that, so I have to keep using it, even though my husband, who's right-handed, would probably be the better person to use it on camera, at least, not look like a fool. I don't know why they, like, both sides don't have serrations. That just seems dumb to me. I mean, I get that this was probably manufactured quite a long time ago when there weren't as many left-handed people, because people used to slap kids when they tried to write left-handed. I don't know if you guys knew that. If you're born in this millennium, you probably didn't know that. But it wasn't really until the 60s or 70s maybe that people, possibly the 50s, there's an American Girl character from the 50s who's left-handed. And so that might be around the time then that being left-handed wasn't a sin. So, don't know if you figured that out, but I'm having trouble getting the crust out of here. And it's mainly because the serrations are crap on the pie server. I used my Cutco much sharper knives, and it was fine. So keep that in mind, I guess, if you're going to a party and using some nice serving ware. So here's my slice of pie. It looks like someone stepped on it, but they didn't, I swear, and it tastes really good. And I will have a prettier picture of more slices for you later. What I did with this was I sliced it all up into, 8 slices, however many slices a pie basically has. So I made 8 slices. I froze most of it, and it does freeze very well. I've already defrosted a box or a container of some of it. And it's a very good recipe, very good pie. I will make this again, highly recommend. Thank you guys so much for watching, and happy eating.